Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide continue to be a thorn in the side of Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns because last week we talked about Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide's presence in the state of Texas, and now we find out that they have offered Bryan Allen Jr., the star safety out the state of Texas, and we have got to talk about this because this has very interesting implications. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from y'all. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no, and given the fact that a lot of the top Tide DB targets currently reside in the state of Texas, and we're talking about a DB today, do you believe that the Crimson Tide will be successful in getting a few DBs out the state of Texas this year? And let me know who you would like to see. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification, that way you don't miss any of my content, because I do constant college football uploads, and if you enjoy that content, be sure to like and comment down below. Those interactions are massive for content creators such as myself. But with all that being said, let's talk about this nuisance that Nick Saban has become in the state of Texas. If you're an Alabama fan, you have got to love this because last week, or rather suppose this week, man, time is just going by so quickly. This week, we talked about how Nick Saban has been very active in the state of Texas. We talked about how not only are the staff very adamant about keeping a very strong presence in Texas. You look at the hire of Mark Orfeh as a defensive analyst. You look at Drew Svoboda as special teams and tight ends. And then you look at Jay Valai at cornerback coach, all sending the message that Texas is a big priority for the Alabama Crimson Tide. You also look at the kids thereafter, and they're after a ton of different prospects. In the video this past week, we talked about Amari Abor, a defensive front guy who Alabama would love nothing more than to get, and a former teammate of Kendrick Blackshire, the Duncanville linebacker who is now with the Crimson Tide. Now we know that Alabama has also offered Bryan Allen Jr., one of the top safeties in the nation, a current Texas commit. And if you're a Texas fan, this is a kid who is very important to your class. In fact, I made a video about Bryan Allen Jr. when he committed to the Texas Longhorns about how important this kid was for this class. And if you are a Texas fan, it's unfortunate that Saban has zeroed his sights in on Texas as the place where a lot of his favorite DB targets are right now. If we look at the state of Texas and if we look at the video I did this past week, we see that Bama's in a phenomenal place right now for Denver Harris. They really like where they are. They're in a really strong place for Bryce Anderson. They have made up a ton of ground in that battle where Texas looked to be the favorite, and now it's a coin flip. That's going to be a really fun battle to watch, but Saban really wants Anderson, and now they've made it known that Bryan Allen is also a guy they would like a part of this staff. And one of the most interesting things to note is Jay Valai, while being a very capable cornerbacks coach, the big pitch isn't Jay Valai. The big pitch is Saban here, because at the end of the day, when you're a DB at the University of Alabama, the buck stops with Nick Saban, and he is one of the few coaches that we can actually say is a transcendent coach in his thought process to the defensive stylistics of football. There are very few coaches in college football we can actually give the moniker of being transcendent. Saban is one of them, and if you actually look back and read back to his days in the Big Ten about how he viewed the defensive back position and how he viewed the evolution that must take place for the defensive back to be able to fit into what he thought would be the modern era of football, it's very interesting, and he actually called it really, really accurately, and that's why his defenses were able to hold on for so long, and it's needing to change now, but that's the evolution of football. That's what makes him so great. Identifying guys such as Bryan Allen, Bryce Anderson, Denver Harris, you get the point. The interesting thing is right now with Bryan Allen is if you looked on the 24/7 sports site for the Texas Longhorns, the Horns feel very confident that they can retain Bryan Allen against any institution in the nation, not named Alabama, because Mike Roach made it very clear that even though he thinks that Bryan Allen really wants to be a Longhorn, this is an offer that the family has been waiting for. Not only Bryan Allen's family, but Bryan Allen himself. This is an offer they have been waiting and hoping to receive, and now it is an offer that has come true. And they called it a dream come true to get the offer from Alabama. At the end of the day, you're pitching against Nick Saban, a guy who puts first rounders into the NFL like it's going out of style. That pitch is very hard to to just turn away from, especially when at the end of the day, the buck stops with him at the DB position at Alabama. This is going to be another incredibly exciting battle to watch because Texas is going to be pulling out all the stops. And visits are going to be huge for all players this summer, no matter whether we're talking about these guys right here or not. Visits are going to be huge for every institution this summer, and it could be the deciding factor in various different battles. This is one we are going to have to keep an eye on because Alabama is adamant about being able to keep a stranglehold on the state of Texas because me being from the state of Texas, it's always incredibly loaded. Saban understands the implications of the state of Texas, and they're looking to keep that stranglehold. The offer to Bryan Allen, very, very interesting, and I'm very intrigued by how he responded, saying it's a dream offer, and I'm really also kind of taken aback by how the 24/7 site for the Horns were saying, we think we can keep him from every institution in the nation not named Alabama. Because now that Alabama has entered themselves into the conversation, this is an entirely different conversation we are having than we were just before. Now, make no mistake, I'm not saying Bryan Allen flips from Texas to Alabama. I'm just saying another person has entered the chat, and now the dance really begins. Now we get to see the recruiting battle really take place on this micro level between Texas and Alabama. Texas trying to box out Alabama, Alabama trying to sell themselves over the Longhorns. This is going to be an insanely fun battle to watch, and the University of Alabama is going to be locked in a bunch of fun battles with Texas. Right now, just off the top of my head, some big battles we're going to be checking back on sooner rather than later as visits happen. We're talking about a Bryan Allen, we're talking about Bryce Anderson, and we're talking about Denver Harris. All three guys who we are absolutely incredibly excited to see where their decisions lie and what we're going to be able to see happen based on the institutions they go to, because either of these institutions is going to be very lucky to get any of these guys. And it's going to be a battle that continues until ink hits paper. I'm really excited to hear from y'all. Let me know, are you excited that Bama has now offered Bryan Allen Jr.? And let me know what you think about their chances of flipping him. That's it. See ya.